Next, we're going to be talking about the posterior palatal seal. Here's a little drawing that I made, and hopefully it'll be much clearer what a posterior palatal seal should be like. Okay, so the posterior extent of your denture or your final Boder mold should be where the vibrating line is. Okay, you can see here the vibrating line. And the vibrating line, what it is the junction between the movable and immovable soft tissue. And the line in front of it is a junction of hard and soft palate. And that's the anatomy which you see here in the skull. Okay. Make sure it's focused. There you go. If you could see here, you can see the anatomy. This is the junction between the hard and soft palate, which is extending back. So you're trying to capture this here. What you don't want is you don't want to place your posterior palatal seal anterior. So you don't want to place it on the hard palate. Where you want to place your posterior palatal seal is behind the junction between the hard and soft palate, which is also called the post-dam. There's some glandular tissues around here, and it's very depressible. So it's based on what kind of house classification it is, but based on that, it depends on how depressible it is. So that area you want to be able to capture. The vibrating line is actually posterior to the junction of the hard and soft palate. So the vibrating line, a lot of people get confused between the junction between the hard and soft palate, but the vibrating line is actually posterior to that. It's actually on the soft palate. The anterior border of the post-dam is actually the junction between the hard and soft palate. Okay, so if we go back to the picture I drew, you can see here that the junction between the hard and soft palate is that's what makes that butterfly-looking drawing. And then the posterior is the junction between the movable and immovable, which you could only detect it clinically. There's no way to tell by just looking at a cast where the vibrating line is. So this is determined clinically by looking at it, and we'll go into detail on how to do that later on. Okay? Okay, so here's the cast. And once you're ready to do the post-dam, we're just going to arbitrarily draw the vibrating line. Okay? And this is done clinically. So in here, I can't demonstrate that, so I'm just going to draw where the vibrating line is. See how the vibrating line is anterior to the extent of the tray? So your tray should always be beyond that, so that way you could capture the vibrating line. If your tray is short of the vibrating line, then you're in trouble. That means you have to redo your tray to make that tray extend back the vibrating line. So this is my vibrating line. And this is the junction between the hard and soft palate, which is that butterfly-looking anatomy. Okay, so this is the area that we're going to be carving today. And I've seen a lot of mistakes how students carve, so I wanted to kind of go over this in detail, how to carve a post-dam. And let's talk about why we carve this in. Okay, so what happens and here's my post-dam. Okay. What happens is when you're processing a denture, which is made out of acrylic, it shrinks. It shrinks a lot, nearly like 6 to 7% shrinkage. And what happens is it shrinks towards the bulk, which is the palate. So what happens is when you're investing your denture, the acrylic shrinks upwards. So if you don't scribe this, and then when you're trying to deliver the denture, you'll see a big gap between your denture and the patient's soft palate. So to compensate that, we start making this post-dam carving. So the whole purpose of this post-dam is to compensate for the processing error, which is the acrylic shrinkage. So the first step to carve a post stem is you'll need a cleoid discoid. Okay? And this is the same cleoid discoid you guys use in operative to carve your amalgam restorations. And there's one point has a spoon, and the other has the cleoid, the discoid area. Okay? So make sure you use the cleoid discoid to carve your post stem. Okay? And the way you want to carve is, there's so many different ways I see in clinic. Is if you look at the drawing that I made. Okay? So this is the sagittal view. So if we cross-section our cast, this is the sagittal view we have. And what you want to do is, this is the vibrating line. Okay? The deepest portion of the carving is where the vibrating line is. So you go straight down, okay? And then what you do is slowly fades forward, and as you go towards your junction between the hard and soft palate. So it slowly fades out. So it's not like a U shape, it's not a V shape, but it's actually downward, and it fades forward. Okay? And I'll demonstrate that in the cast. There you go. So what you want to use is start with your discoid, which is the spade shape. Okay? You want to use that. It has a right angle to carve in. And you start out with the vibrating line. Okay? You start out with the, make sure you guys can see here. Okay. So you start out with the vibrating line, and of course you start out with this hamular notch area, and you start scribing it just gently where the vibrating line is. Now the depth is different. Okay? Where the hamular notch area, you want to make it a millimeter deep. Okay? Here's the drawing again. Okay? So where the hamular notch is, it's a millimeter deep, and then it's 1.5, and then a millimeter where the rapé is, and then 1.5, and then a millimeter here. Keep that in mind. So I'm still scribing my vibrating line, and as I'm scribing, I'm kind of fading away as I go towards my hamular notch. Okay? And then I'm going deeper because I need 1.5 at this area where the glandular tissue is. And then when I cross the middle, it's fading again. And then I'm going deep again where the glandular tissue is. And then I'm fading again towards my hamular notch. So what you're aiming for is, you want to be able to have a peripheral roll, or the depth, all the way around, and it continues from the hamular notch down to the post stem. Okay, once you got scribed the vibrating line is, you want to switch it to your round cleoid. And what that does is, from the posterior extent, you want to blend it in to the junction between the hard and soft palate. Okay? And here, so I start from the anterior, and I blend it in. Okay, the deepest portion is where the glandular tissue is, and it fades out to the pterygomaxillary notch. There was actually an interesting study they did where they made different kind of shapes of the post stem, and they actually showed this has the most retention. So there is some science behind this as well. Okay, so it's not rocket science. So it just takes a lot of some effort and time. Okay, so it's very hard to see, so I'll draw the outline where I carved. Okay, so you could see the deepest portion is on the back, which is the vibrating line, and it fades out towards the front. And again, a millimeter, 1.5, a millimeter, 1.5, and then a millimeter. Okay, thank you.